What would you do if you discovered the man you loved never loved you at all, and that your entire relationship started with a $50,000 bet? My name is Althea Whitmore, and the man I trusted with my heart, Brennan Colford, disappeared from my life the night I discovered the truth. 18 months later, he walked into my boardroom again, but this time he wasn't confident or charming. He looked desperate, and he was begging. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I was never the kind of person who believed in dramatic love stories. My life had always been simple and structured. I worked long hours building my consulting business, and most of my days were spent in meetings, planning strategies, and solving problems for clients. Relationships were never my main focus. Then Brennan appeared in my life. At first, he seemed different from everyone else I had met. He didn't try to impress me with money or status. Instead, he spoke calmly, asked thoughtful questions, and actually listened to what I said. That alone made him stand out. The first time we talked, it felt natural and easy. Brennan had this quiet confidence that made people comfortable around him. He seemed patient and kind, and there was something about the way he paid attention to small details that made me feel seen. Looking back now, I realized something I didn't understand then. Some people don't notice details because they care. Some people notice details because they're studying you. At the time, though, I thought I had finally met someone who truly understood me. And that was the beginning of everything. Not long after that first meeting, Brennan slowly became a regular part of my life. It didn't happen suddenly. He never rushed anything or pushed too hard. Instead, everything felt natural, almost effortless. A few days after we met, he sent a simple message asking if I wanted to grab coffee after work. I normally avoided small outings because my schedule was always packed, but something about his calm attitude made it easy to say yes. We met at a quiet cafe not far from my office. Brennan arrived a few minutes early and had already ordered my coffee. I remember being surprised when I saw it. It was exactly how I like it. I hadn't even told him yet. When I asked how he knew, he smiled and said he noticed my order the night we met at the charity dinner. At the time, I thought it was sweet, thoughtful, the kind of attention most people don't bother with. Our conversations were easy and comfortable. Brennan didn't talk too much about himself, but he was always curious about my work, my goals, and the things that mattered to me. Most people found my career intimidating. Running a consulting business meant long hours and constant pressure, and many men I had dated before didn't really understand that part of my life. But Brennan never seemed bothered by it. If anything, he encouraged me. Whenever I talked about a difficult client or a stressful project, he listened carefully and offered calm advice. He never tried to control anything or make decisions for me. He just supported me. That made a big difference. Slowly, he started becoming part of my daily routine. Morning messages, short calls during lunch, dinner together when our schedules allowed it. Everything about him felt steady and reliable. But there was one person in my life who didn't feel the same way. My closest friend, Maribel Knox, met Brennan a few weeks later. After we left dinner that night, she looked at me with a strange expression and said something I didn't fully understand at the time. Althea, men like him don't just appear out of nowhere. I laughed it off. To me, Brennan was just someone kind who had entered my life at the right time. I had no idea that what felt like the beginning of something real was actually the beginning of a carefully planned game. Over the next few months, Brennan became the person I trusted the most. Our relationship grew slowly, but it felt strong and real. He was always there when I needed someone to talk to, and he seemed to understand the pressure that came with my work. My days were usually long and exhausting. Running a consulting firm meant constant meetings, deadlines, and difficult decisions. Many nights, I came home feeling drained. But Brennan had a way of making those days feel lighter. Sometimes he would cook dinner before I arrived. Other times, he would simply sit with me while I talked about my day. He never acted bored or distracted. He listened carefully, like every word mattered. That kind of attention was something I had never experienced before. Little by little, Brennan learned everything about me. He knew how I liked my coffee in the morning. He knew I worked better late at night than early in the day. He even remembered small things, like the music I played when I needed to relax. At the time, it all felt like love. Looking back now, I realize how carefully he was observing everything. But when you're falling in love, you don't think that way. You believe the person beside you cares because they want to. About 6 months after we started dating, Brennan had become a big part of my life. My colleagues knew about him. My friends had met him. Even Maribel, who had been unsure at first, stopped questioning things. Everything seemed normal. One evening we were sitting on my apartment balcony after dinner. The city lights were glowing in the distance, and the night felt peaceful. Brennan looked at me quietly for a moment and then said something simple. "You work harder than anyone I know." I smiled and told him that building my company meant everything to me. He nodded and said he admired that about me. At that moment, I felt completely safe with him. I believed I had finally found someone who respected my ambitions instead of feeling threatened by them. What I didn't know was that somewhere else, in conversations I had never seen, Brennan was telling a very different story. To other people, our relationship wasn't something meaningful. To them, it was just a challenge he was trying to win. And I was the prize. About 6 months into our relationship, life felt stable in a way it never had before. Work was busy as always, but having Brennan around made everything feel balanced. I believed I had finally found someone who truly cared about me. Then one night changed everything. It was a normal Friday evening. I had finished work later than usual, and Brennan was already at my apartment when I arrived. He had ordered dinner for us, and we spent the evening talking and relaxing like we usually did. Nothing felt unusual. Later that night, Brennan went to take a shower. While he was gone, I stayed in the kitchen cleaning up a few things. His phone was lying on the counter where he had left it. I wasn't the type of person who checked someone else's phone. I trusted him completely. But then the screen lit up. A message notification appeared. At first, I ignored it. I didn't want to invade his privacy. But something about the message caught my attention. The contact name was Tavian, and the message said, 18 months almost done. Hope she's worth the $50,000. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. The words didn't make sense. I thought maybe it was some kind of joke between friends or a conversation I didn't understand. Still, a strange feeling started growing in my chest. My hands felt cold as I picked up the phone. I hesitated for a few seconds, telling myself to put it back down. But the message kept repeating in my mind. 18 months. $50,000. Slowly, I unlocked the phone. Brennan had once told me his passcode while asking me to answer a call for him. I remembered it without even trying. When the conversation opened, my heart began beating faster. The messages between Brennan and Tavian went back months. At first, they looked casual, like normal conversations between friends. But the more I read, the more something felt wrong. Then I saw the messages that made everything clear. They were talking about me. Not in a loving way. Not even in a respectful way. They were discussing progress. Like someone talking about a project. And that was the moment I realized something terrible. The relationship I believed was real might never have been real at all. And Brennan was about to walk out of the shower and find me standing there with his phone. I stood in the kitchen holding Brennan's phone, staring at the messages that were still open on the screen. My heart was beating so fast that I could hear it in my ears. Part of me wanted to believe I had misunderstood something. But the more I read, the clearer the truth became. The messages between Brennan and Tavian went back to the very beginning of our relationship. They talked about when Brennan first approached me at the charity dinner. They talked about our early dates. They even talked about moments that I had believed were special. Except they didn't describe them as memories. They described them as progress. One message from Tavian said, "So she's really falling for it." Brennan had replied, "Yeah, she trusts me completely now." My hands started shaking. Another message appeared further down in the conversation. "Just make sure you last the full 18 months, Tavian wrote. Then the 50 grand is yours." And Brennan answered with a laughing emoji. That was the moment everything inside me broke. All the memories I had trusted suddenly felt fake. Every kind word, every thoughtful gesture, every quiet moment together started replaying in my mind, but now they looked completely different. They weren't acts of love. They were moves in a game. The sound of the shower turning off pulled me back to reality. Brennan was about to walk into the kitchen. For a few seconds, I thought about putting the phone back and pretending I had seen nothing. Maybe I could ask him about it calmly. But I already knew the truth. So instead, I stood there waiting. A minute later, Brennan walked into the room, drying his hair with a towel. He stopped the moment he saw me. His eyes immediately moved to the phone in my hand. The expression on his face changed instantly. The calm confidence he always carried disappeared. For the first time since I had known him, Brennan looked nervous. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then I slowly turned the phone toward him, so he could see the conversation on the screen. My voice was quiet when I finally asked the question. Was I just a $50,000 bet? Brennan stared at the messages, then looked back at me. And instead of denying it, he just stood there in silence. The silence in the kitchen felt heavy. Brennan looked at the phone in my hand, then back at my face. For a moment, I thought he might try to explain it away or say it was some kind of misunderstanding. But he didn't. He slowly pulled out a chair and sat down at the table, running his hand through his hair like he was trying to think of the right words. That alone told me everything. If the messages weren't real, he would have denied them immediately. My chest felt tight as I watched him sit there quietly. So it's true? I asked again. Brennan finally looked up at me. His expression wasn't angry or defensive. It almost looked tired. It started as a bet, he said. Hearing those words out loud felt like someone had dropped a weight on my chest. Even though I had already read the messages, part of me had still hoped he would say it wasn't real. But he didn't. He admitted it without hesitation. I felt a wave of anger rise inside me. Started as a bet. I repeated. You mean everything, the dates, the conversations, all of it was part of some stupid game? Brennan shook his head quickly. At first, yes, he said. But it changed. I stared at him, not understanding what he meant. What do you mean it changed? He looked down at the table for a moment before answering. I didn't expect things to turn out this way, he said quietly. When the bet started, it was just something stupid between friends. They thought it would be impossible to make someone like you fall in love. Someone like me. Those words made my stomach twist. But after a while, Brennan continued, it stopped feeling like a bet. I felt my hands clench at my sides. So, when exactly did that happen? I asked. Before or after you sent updates about me like I was some kind of experiment? Brennan didn't answer right away. That silence was worse than anything he could have said. Finally, he stood up from the chair. I know I hurt you, he said, but it wasn't supposed to go this far. Before I could respond, he walked past me toward the bedroom. Within minutes, he packed a small bag. He didn't argue. He didn't try to convince me to forgive him. He just left. The door closed behind him, and that was the last time I saw Brennan Colford for a very long time. No calls. No messages. No explanation. Just silence. And that silence lasted 18 months. After Brennan left that night, the apartment felt completely different. The silence in the rooms was heavy, almost uncomfortable. Every corner reminded me of memories that now felt fake. For the first few weeks, I struggled to focus on anything. Simple things like checking emails or attending meetings felt exhausting. My mind kept replaying the same question again and again. How could I have trusted someone so completely? The betrayal hurt more than I expected. It wasn't just about the bet or the money. It was about the time, the emotions, and the trust one had given to someone who never deserved it. But slowly, something inside me started to change. Instead of sitting with the pain, I began putting all my energy into work. My consulting company had always been important to me, but now it became my main focus. I started working longer hours than ever before. I accepted new projects, met new clients, and pushed myself harder every day. The work kept my mind busy. Weeks turned into months, and the company began growing faster than I had ever imagined. A few successful projects brought in major clients, and soon my small consulting firm started gaining serious attention in the industry. I expanded the team, opened a larger office, and started taking on bigger corporate contracts. For the first time, I felt like I was fully in control of my life again. Maribel stayed close during that time. She checked on me often and reminded me not to let the past control my future. "You didn't lose anything," she told me once. He did. At first, I didn't fully believe that. But over time, I began to see things differently. 18 months passed faster than I expected. By that time, my company had grown into a powerful corporate strategy firm. I was no longer just the founder. I had become the CEO of a rapidly expanding business. The pain Brennan left behind slowly faded into something distant. I stopped thinking about him, stopped wondering where he was, stopped caring what happened to him. Then one morning, during an important executive meeting in our boardroom, the door suddenly opened, and the last person I ever expected to see again walked inside. Brennan Colford. But the man standing there looked nothing like the one who had walked out of my apartment 18 months earlier. The boardroom was quiet as I finished explaining our new expansion plan to the executives sitting around the long table. Papers were spread out in front of everyone, and the large windows behind me showed the city skyline. It was an important meeting. We were discussing a partnership that could take our company to the next level. Everything was going smoothly. Then the door opened. At first, I assumed it was an assistant bringing in documents or coffee. That happens sometimes during long meetings. No one paid much attention when the door moved. But a second later, the room slowly fell silent. One by one, people around the table turned their heads toward the entrance. I followed their gaze. And that's when I saw him. Brennan Colford. For a moment, it felt like time had paused. My mind struggled to process what I was seeing. The last time I had seen him was 18 months earlier, when he walked out of my apartment with a bag in his hand. But the man standing in the doorway now looked very different. His suit looked worn and slightly wrinkled. The confident posture he once had was gone. His shoulders were tense, and there was a tired look in his eyes. He looked like someone who had been carrying a heavy weight for a long time. The confident man who once believed he could control everything was no longer there. The people sitting at the table looked confused. They didn't know who Brennan was or why he had walked into the meeting. One of the executives spoke first. "Can we help you?" Brennan didn't answer him. His eyes were fixed on me. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The entire room seemed to be waiting for something to happen. Finally, Brennan cleared his throat and took a step forward. "Althea," he said quietly. Hearing my name from his voice after so long felt strange. It brought back memories I had spent months trying to forget. I kept my expression calm. "Yes," I replied. He hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I need to talk to you," he said. The room became even more silent. I looked around the table at the executives, then back at Brennan. This was the last place I ever expected to see him. But somehow, he had found his way here. And whatever he came for, it was clear he wasn't here by accident. The room stayed quiet for a few seconds after Brennan spoke. Everyone around the table looked confused. They were waiting for me to explain who he was, but I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I kept my eyes on Brennan. 18 months ago, he had walked out of my life without hesitation. Now he had walked into my boardroom as if he belonged there. But the difference between those two moments was obvious. Back then, he had confidence. Now he looked uncertain. I slowly closed the folder in front of me and stood up from my chair. "Give us a moment," I said calmly to the executives. They exchanged a few curious looks, but began gathering their papers and leaving the room one by one. Within a minute, the large boardroom was empty except for the two of us. The door closed behind the last person. For the first time since Brennan entered, the silence felt personal. I remained standing at the end of the table while he slowly walked closer. When he stopped, there was still a large distance between us. "What do you want?" I asked. Brennan let out a slow breath, like he had been holding it for a long time. "I know I probably don't deserve this conversation," he said, but I didn't know where else to go. His voice sounded different from before. It lacked the smooth confidence he once had. I crossed my arms and waited. After a few seconds, he continued speaking. "My company is collapsing," he admitted. That caught my attention. Brennan had always talked about his business plans and investments when we were together. He liked to present himself as someone who understood the corporate world. But now he looked like someone who had lost control of everything. Bad decisions, he said quietly. Bad partnerships. He paused before adding something else. The people who made that bet with me, they're gone. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Brennan looked directly at me. I need help, he said. The words hung in the air between us. Of all the things I expected him to say after 18 months, that was not one of them. He believed I would help him. After everything he had done. After the lies, the bet, and the way he disappeared from my life without even trying to fix the damage he caused. I studied his face carefully. For the first time, Brennan Colford didn't look like a man in control. He looked like someone who had run out of options. And somehow, he had decided that I was his last one. That I looked at Brennan for a long moment without saying anything. 18 months ago, I had stood in my kitchen feeling completely powerless while he held all the control. Now, the situation was very different. This was my office, my company, my boardroom. And Brennan was standing here asking me for help. What exactly do you want from me? I finally asked. He hesitated before answering. My company is close to shutting down, he admitted. I tried to recover after some bad investments, but nothing worked. I'm out of options. He glanced around the large boardroom, taking in the polished table, the city view, and the quiet success surrounding us. You built something incredible, he said. I heard about your company growing, but I didn't realize how big it became. I didn't respond to the compliment. Instead, I walked slowly toward the table and picked up a thin folder that had been sitting there. Brennan watched me carefully. I might be able to help, I said calmly. For the first time since he entered the room, a small look of relief appeared on his face. Really? He asked. I placed the folder on the table and pushed it toward him. You should read this first. He opened it quickly. The moment his eyes moved across the first page, his expression changed. The relief disappeared and was replaced with confusion. This isn't funding, he said. No, I replied. He flipped through the pages, reading faster now. His eyes widened slightly. This is an acquisition agreement, he said slowly. I nodded. Yes. My company will buy yours. Brennan looked up at me in shock. But this price is almost nothing, he said. That's correct, I answered. He stared at the document again, clearly realizing what it meant. His company wasn't being saved. It was being taken over. You're serious? He asked quietly. I met his eyes. You once treated my life like a game, I said calmly. You turned my trust into a $50,000 bet. He didn't interrupt. This time, I continued. The game belongs to me. Brennan looked down at the contract again. The man who once believed he could control everything now had only two choices. Accept the deal, or lose everything. And for the first time since the day we met, he was the one who had no power at all.